Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles release their tension. Let the medieval darkness, that deep, complete darkness that modern people almost never experience, hold you gently. You're safe. You're warm. You're exactly where you need to be. The long, dark night is not something to fear. It's something to rest in, to trust, to surrender to. The medieval family is waking now to their new day. But you can stay in the darkness a bit longer. You can let sleep continue its work. You've traveled through the night with them, and now you've earned your rest. Tomorrow will come. It always does. But tonight, let the darkness be what it was meant to be. A time of peace, restoration, and deep, healing sleep. The hearth glows softly. The darkness holds you. Sleep returns like a tide. Rest well. The night is long, but morning always comes. Good night. Hey there. Before we begin tonight's journey, let's make sure you're as comfortable as possible. Adjust your pillows. Maybe add one more, or take one away. Whatever feels right. Pull that blanket up to exactly where you want it. If you've got a fan running, or some gentle white noise, perfect. We're going to spend the next hour or so together, and I want you settled in like you're tucked into a medieval bed on the longest, darkest night of winter. I always love knowing where you all are in the world. Drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. It's fascinating to think of us all here together, scattered across time zones, all preparing for sleep, just like medieval people did hundreds of years ago. And if these videos help you rest, a quick like or subscribe really helps keep this little corner of the internet going. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you slept in true darkness? Not just turning off the lights, but actual darkness. No LED clock glowing on your nightstand. No phone screen within reach. No street light filtering through your window. No ambient glow from the neighbor's porch light. Complete, total, absolute darkness. For most of us, the answer is probably never. We've never experienced it. Our nights are filled with artificial light, with the soft glow of electronics on standby, with light pollution that turns the night sky orange instead of black. But for medieval people, that kind of darkness was every single night. When the sun set, darkness came. Real darkness. The kind that's so complete, you literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. And in that darkness, for 12, 14, sometimes 16 hours, depending on the season, they had to sleep, or try to. Tonight, we're going to explore how they did it. Not just the practical mechanics, though we'll cover those, but what it actually felt like. What it meant to live in a world where night was truly night, where darkness was absolute, where sleep wasn't just a personal choice, but a communal necessity, governed by the sun and seasons, rather than alarm clocks and work schedules. So close your eyes, if you'd like, or just let them rest softly. Take a deep breath, let it out slowly, and step with me into the darkness of a medieval night. It's late November, 1348. We're in a small village in the English Midlands. Let's call it Ashford, though the name doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's a typical agricultural village. 30 or 40 households, a stone church, fields surrounding the village in all directions, woods beyond the fields, and right now, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun is already setting. 4 o'clock. That's when darkness begins to fall in late November in England. not the slow, gradual sunset of summer evenings that seem to last forever. This is quick. The light fades fast. By 4:30 it's dusk. By 5 it's dark. By 5:30 it's been dark so long it feels like the sun never existed. And it won't rise again until nearly 8 o'clock the next morning. That's 15 hours of darkness. 15 hours when the world is hidden, when travel is dangerous, when work is impossible, when all you can do is huddle inside and wait for dawn. But here's something that might surprise you. Medieval people didn't sleep the way we do. They didn't go to bed at 10 or 11 and sleep straight through until 6 or 7 in the morning. That pattern, what sleep researchers call consolidated sleep, is actually a modern invention created by artificial lighting and industrial work schedules. Medieval people practiced what historians call segmented sleep or biphasic sleep. They slept in 2 distinct periods, separated by an hour or 2 of wakefulness in the middle of the night. This wasn't insomnia. This wasn't a sleep disorder. This was normal. This was how humans slept for thousands of years before electricity changed everything. Tonight, we're going to experience that pattern. We're going to follow a family through a complete medieval night, from sunset to sunrise, and understand not just how they slept, but why they slept that way. What they did during that wakeful period in the middle of the night, and what it felt like to live in rhythm with darkness, rather than constantly fighting against it. The cottage belongs to a family named Miller. Appropriate, since the father, Thomas, works at the village mill, grinding grain into flour. His wife is Beatrice. They have 3 children, John, age 12, Emma, age 9, and little Geoffrey, age 4. Thomas's elderly father, who everyone calls Old Thomas, to distinguish him from his son, lives with them as well. The cottage is typical for a family of their station. 1 room, maybe 18 feet by 22 feet. Timber frame, wattle and daub walls, thatched roof, a hearth on 1 wall, a sleeping platform, essentially a raised wooden frame with rope webbing supporting a straw-filled mattress in the corner. A few pieces of simple furniture, a bench, a stool, a chest for storing clothes and valuables. That's it. That's the entire home. Medieval people didn't fight this darkness the way we do. They didn't try to extend the day with artificial light. They couldn't. Light was expensive. Candles cost money. Oil for lamps cost money. Rush lights, the cheapest option, still required resources to make. And none of these sources of light were very bright anyway. Even a room full of candles, which no peasant could afford, would barely illuminate what a single modern light bulb does effortlessly. So they accepted the darkness. They worked with it. They organized their entire lives around it. And most importantly, they slept through it. Or at least they tried to. It's early evening now, about 5 o'clock. The sun set half an hour ago. The sky outside is that deep dark blue that comes after sunset, though it's fading fast into black. Inside the cottage, it's already quite dark. The only light comes from the hearth, where a fire burns with 2 oak logs and a bed of coals, and from a single rushlight in an iron holder near the fire. The family has just finished their evening meal, a pottage of barley, peas, and onion, with a bit of salted pork for flavour. The bowls have been wiped clean and set aside. Now comes the long stretch of darkness before sleep. But they won't go to bed yet. It's only 5 o'clock. Even by medieval standards, that's too early to sleep for the entire night. They'd wake at midnight or 1 in the morning and have 10 hours of darkness still to endure with nothing to do. So they'll stay up a bit longer, work by the firelight, talk quietly, gradually wind down. And when the drowsiness becomes too strong to resist, probably around 7 or 8 o'clock, then they'll go to bed for the first sleep. The room is dim. The firelight creates a small circle of visibility, maybe 6 feet in diameter, where you can see clearly. Beyond that circle, objects fade into shadow. The far corners of the room are completely dark. If you walked over there, you'd be navigating by memory and touch, not sight. Thomas sits on the stool near the fire, working on a piece of wood. He's carving a new handle for a tool, one of the many ongoing maintenance tasks that fill a medieval person's life. His knife scrapes softly against the wood, shaving off thin curls that fall to the floor rushes. Beatrice is spinning wool, as always. The drop spindle rotates in the firelight, catching and reflecting the orange glow. Her hands move automatically, drawing out the fiber, maintaining the twist. She could probably do this in complete darkness if she had to. Her fingers know the feel of it. Old Thomas is in his usual position, the chair closest to the fire, wrapped in his cloak, hands stretched toward the warmth. His breathing is slow and a bit raspy. He might be dozing. He might just be resting. At his age, probably past 60, which makes him truly ancient. The distinction between resting and dozing is blurred. The children are on the floor near the fire. John is working on some task. It's hard to see exactly what in the dim light, but it looks like he's sorting dried beans, separating good ones from damaged ones. Emma is playing quietly with a small doll made of wrapped cloth. Little Geoffrey is already drowsy, his head nodding, fighting sleep. Outside, it's now completely dark. If you opened the door, you'd see nothing. Just blackness. No moon tonight. It's the dark of the moon, the new moon phase when even that faint light is absent. On a cloudy, moonless night in medieval England, away from any cities, the darkness outside is absolute. Inside, the fire provides not just light, but a psychological anchor. It's the center of the room, the center of attention, the center of safety. Beyond the firelight is darkness, and in darkness, anything might exist. Medieval people were taught from childhood to fear the dark, not because of superstition necessarily, but because darkness genuinely held dangers. You could trip and injure yourself. You could knock over something valuable. You could step on a sleeping dog who might bite in surprise. Darkness was hazardous. So everyone stays close to the fire, close to the light, close to each other. Getting late, Thomas observes, not looking up from his carving. Children should be getting ready for bed soon. Soon, Beatrice agrees. Let them finish their tasks first. There's no clock to check, no way to know the exact time. But Thomas has a sense of it, a sense developed from years of living by the rhythms of daylight and darkness. He can feel the deepening of the evening. He knows roughly how long it's been since sunset. He knows approximately when people should start preparing for sleep. Geoffrey's head drops forward, jerks back up. He's losing the battle with drowsiness. Emma notices and giggles softly. Geoffrey's falling asleep, sitting up, she whispers to John. You'll be next, John says, not unkindly. You always fall asleep first. Beatrice, sets down her spindle. "All right," she says. "Time to prepare for bed. John, bank the fire. Emma, help me with the bed. Geoffrey, come here. Let's get you settled." The evening tasks begin. The tasks that every medieval household performed every night. The rituals that mark the transition from wakefulness to sleep. Thomas finishes the section of carving he's working on and sets it aside. He'll continue tomorrow, by daylight, when he can see the grain of the wood better. For now, it's enough. John goes to the hearth with a wooden shovel. He begins the process of banking the fire, raking the coals together into a compact pile, adding one more log positioned carefully for slow burning, then covering the whole thing with a layer of ash. Not enough to smother it completely, but enough to restrict oxygen flow and make it burn very slowly through the night. This is crucial. If the fire goes out completely, restarting it in the morning is difficult and time-consuming. You'd need to use flint and steel to create sparks, catch them on tinder, carefully nurture a tiny flame into something substantial. Much better to bank it properly so that in the morning you can simply uncover the embers, add kindling, and have flames again within minutes. John works carefully, his face serious with concentration. He's done this many times, but it's still a task that requires attention. Too much ash and you kill the fire. Too little and it burns through your fuel by midnight. He packs the ash firmly around the back and sides of the log, leaves the front slightly looser, and steps back to observe his work. The hearth looks almost dead now, just a grey mound with the faintest hint of orange glowing deep within. But that orange glow is life. That's tomorrow's fire, sleeping, waiting to be awakened. "Geoffrey, come," Beatrice calls softly. The little boy stumbles over, barely able to keep his eyes open. Beatrice helps him out of his outer tunic. He'll sleep in his linen undershift, as everyone does. She guides him to the sleeping platform and tucks him in, covering him with blankets, making sure he's near one of the heated stones. Geoffrey sighs and immediately curls into a ball, his breathing already deepening towards sleep. "Emma, you next," Beatrice says. Emma removes her outer gown and climbs onto the platform beside her little brother. She's more awake than Geoffrey, but not by much. The warmth of the bed, the darkness, the day's work, all of it pulls at her. She lies down, pulls the blanket up to her chin, and closes her eyes. John finishes banking the fire and joins his siblings on the sleeping platform. The platform is crowded. It needs to be to fit everyone, but that crowding is warmth. The children arrange themselves efficiently. Geoffrey in the middle, Emma and John on either side, all of them sharing blankets, their body heat combining. Meanwhile, Beatrice and Emma are preparing the sleeping platform. During the day, the bedding is left loosely arranged. Blankets folded at the foot, the straw mattress left to air. Now they're transforming it into a proper sleeping space. Emma helps her mother shake out the blankets. Heavy wool, coarse but warm. They spread them over the mattress, layering them. Then they retrieve the pillows, simple cloth sacks stuffed with wool or straw, and arrange them at the head of the bed. Beatrice also pulls out 2 heated stones from the edge of the hearth, stones that have been warming there all evening. She wraps each one in layers of old rag and tucks them into the bed, one near the foot, one near the middle. These will provide warmth for the first few hours of sleep, radiating heat slowly into the bedding. When Thomas finishes, he adds a personal petition, quiet, almost inaudible. Lord, protect this house and all within it through the dark hours. Keep us safe until morning light. Amen. Amen, the others echo. Prayer done, protection invoked. Now it's time to sleep. Thomas stands, removes his outer tunic, and climbs onto the platform in his linen undershift. Beatrice extinguishes the last rushlight, pinching it out between her fingers, and follows him. The room plunges into complete darkness. Not dim, not shadowy, dark. Absolutely, totally dark. For a moment there's just breathing. 6 people breathing in the darkness, adjusting to their positions, pulling blankets higher, tucking in closer to each other for warmth. Old Thomas has already shuffled over to the sleeping platform and claimed his spot at the back, against the wall, where he's most protected from drafts. He settles with a groan, his joints protesting, and pulls his cloak over himself as an extra blanket. That leaves Thomas and Beatrice. They'll sleep on the outer edge of the platform. Thomas closest to the room, because that's the man's position, the position from which he can respond to any threat. Beatrice beside him, between him and the children. But before they sleep, there's one more task. Thomas kneels beside the platform. In the near darkness, the fire is banked now. The rushlight has burned down to almost nothing. He crosses himself and begins to murmur prayers. Pater noster, qui es in caelis. The Lord's Prayer, said every night without fail, a protection against the dangers of darkness. The others bow their heads respectfully. Emma and John mouth the words along with their father. The Latin familiar, even if not fully understood. Geoffrey is already asleep, his breathing soft and even. Outside, the wind picks up slightly. Not a storm, just the normal wind of a November night. It whispers against the thatch, a constant soft sound that's almost soothing. Inside, warmth. The banked fire still radiates some heat. The stones in the bed give off their stored warmth. 6 bodies generate heat. The wool blankets trap it. The small room holds it close enough that the cold can't fully penetrate. And gradually, sleep comes. The children are already gone, lost in the particular deep sleep of childhood. Geoffrey especially. He'll probably sleep straight through until morning, dead to the world. Old Thomas's sleep is different, lighter, more fragmented. He wakes periodically, shifts position to ease his aching joints, drifts back to sleep. This is the sleep of the elderly, less deep, less restful, punctuated by small wakings that he barely remembers. But for now, for these first hours of the night, the household sleeps. All of them breathing softly in the darkness, invisible to each other, present only as sound and shared warmth. This is what medieval people called the first sleep, the initial period of rest that began shortly after darkness fell and lasted until sometime around midnight or 1 in the morning. It wasn't light sleep. It was deep, restorative sleep, the kind that comes easily when you've worked physically all day, when your body is genuinely tired, when darkness has surrounded you for hours. Thomas falls asleep quickly. He always does. The day's work at the mill, lifting heavy sacks of grain, turning the grind in stones, maintaining the water wheel, has left him exhausted in the good way. His breathing deepens, slows, becomes rhythmic. Within minutes, he's fully asleep. Beatrice takes a bit longer. She's listening. listening for the children's breathing, making sure they've settled, making sure Jeffrey hasn't kicked off his blanket, making sure no one is coughing or showing signs of illness. This is the mother's burden, to sleep lightly enough that you'll wake if needed, even in the deepest darkness. But eventually, she too relaxes. Her breathing slows. Her grip on wakefulness loosens. Sleep takes her gently. The room is silent, except for breathing and the occasional creak of the house settling. The banked fire glows faintly beneath its ash blanket. You can't see it from the sleeping platform, but it's there, a secret warmth, a promise of morning. Outside, the wind continues its quiet conversation with the thatch. No owls tonight, no dogs barking, just wind and darkness, and 6 people sleeping. Time passes. How much time, it's impossible to say in the darkness. Without light, without clocks, time becomes something felt rather than measured. It stretches and compresses. A minute might feel like 10. An hour might pass unnoticed. The heated stones in the bed gradually cool. They're still warm, not hot anymore, but still radiating enough heat to make their presence known. The wool blankets trap that heat against sleeping bodies. This is good sleep. The kind of sleep that knits muscles back together, that processes the day's experiences into memory, that allows the body to repair itself. Medieval people didn't understand the science of sleep, but they understood its necessity. They knew that without enough sleep you got sick, you made mistakes, you couldn't work properly. Sleep was survival. The children don't move. Jeffrey is sprawled out, taking up more space than his small body should require. Emma has curled into a tight ball. John sleeps on his stomach, one arm flung over the edge of the platform. Thomas and Beatrice sleep pressed close together, their breathing synchronized. After years of marriage, they've learned to sleep in tandem, shifting positions together without fully waking, maintaining contact even in unconsciousness. Hours pass, the deepest darkness, the quietest time. Even the wind has died down to almost nothing. The world seems to be holding its breath. And then, around midnight, maybe a bit before, maybe a bit after, Thomas wakes, not suddenly, not startled or alarmed, just wakes, his eyes open in the darkness, seeing nothing, but he's fully conscious, alert, no longer sleeping. This is normal. This is the pattern. First sleep ends somewhere around midnight. The body wakes naturally, without external stimulus. And then comes the period of wakefulness between the first and second sleep. Historians call this period the watching hours, or the night watch. Medieval people had various names for it. Sometimes they just called it the waking. It was a recognized part of the night cycle, so common that people planned for it, used it, even looked forward to it. Thomas lies still for a moment, orienting himself. He can hear Beatrice breathing beside him, still asleep. The children are silent. Old Thomas is snoring softly. The house is dark and warm and safe. He carefully extracts himself from the blankets, trying not to disturb Beatrice. The wooden platform creaks slightly as he shifts his weight, but no one wakes. He's done this many times. He knows how to move quietly. His feet find the floor, cold against his soles, even through the layer of rushes. He stands, stretches slightly, letting his joints crack. Then he navigates by memory and feel toward the hearth. The darkness is absolute. He literally cannot see his feet, cannot see his hands, cannot see the walls of his own home. But he doesn't need to see. He knows where everything is. 3 steps forward from the bed, 2 steps to the left. His hand reaches out and touches the rough stone of the hearth. Found it. Thomas kneels at the hearth and carefully sweeps away some of the ash he banked over the fire hours ago. Beneath the grey ash, embers glow orange, still alive, still warm. Relief washes through him. Good. The fire survived. The day can begin properly. He adds a small piece of kindling, blowing gently on the coals. The kindling catches with a tiny flame that seems impossibly bright after hours of darkness. He doesn't build up a large fire. That would waste fuel, and they need the wood to last until spring. Just enough flame to provide a little light and a bit of warmth. Just enough to make this wakeful period comfortable. In the small, flickering glow, the room emerges from darkness. Not clearly. It's still dim, still shadowy, but enough that shapes are visible now. The sleeping platform with its huddled forms, the chest against the wall, the hanging herbs from the rafters. Home, visible again. Thomas sits on the stool near the fire and just exists for a moment, not doing anything, not thinking about anything particular, just being awake in the middle of the night, in the quiet, in the warmth of the small fire. This period, this wakeful time between sleeps, was surprisingly important to medieval people. It wasn't wasted time. It wasn't insomnia to be endured. It was a natural, expected part of the night that served various purposes. For some people, it was a time for prayer. The most devout would use these hours for private devotion, for contemplation of religious matters, for saying additional prayers beyond the required evening ones. Monks and nuns, of course, had formal night offices. Religious services held in the middle of the night, but even lay people might spend some of this wakeful time in quiet prayer. For others, it was a time for intimacy. With the children asleep and darkness providing privacy, married couples might make love during these hours. Medieval advice manuals actually suggested this as the best time for marital relations, when you were rested from the first sleep, but not yet so deeply in the second sleep that you'd be disturbed. For still others, it was a time for reflection, for thinking about the day past and the day to come, for processing worries or making plans. In a world with no privacy during daylight hours, where you were constantly surrounded by family or fellow workers, these quiet hours in the darkness offered rare time alone with your thoughts. And for many, it was simply a time to tend to practical needs, to use the chamber pot, to check on the fire, to check on children or elderly relatives, to have a drink of water or a bit of leftover bread if you were hungry, to shift position and let blood flow back into compressed limbs. Thomas sits by his small fire and thinks about nothing much. He's tired but not sleepy, awake but not energized, just present in the moment, in the darkness, in the quiet. Behind him, he hears stirring. Beatrice has woken too. This often happened. When one partner woke, the movement or change in breathing often woke the other. Thomas, she whispers softly. I'm here, he says, equally quiet. By the fire, Beatrice carefully climbs out of bed and joins him. She's wrapped her cloak around her shoulders against the cold. She settles onto the floor near the hearth, close to the warmth, and sighs. Can't sleep? Thomas asks. Slept already, Beatrice says. Now I'm awake, the usual. They sit together in comfortable silence for a while. The fire crackles softly. Outside, the wind has picked up again slightly. A gentle reminder that the world beyond their walls still exists. Geoffrey coughed earlier, Beatrice says after a while. In his sleep. Just once, but I heard it. Is he ill? Thomas asks, concern touching his voice. Childhood illness is always a worry. I don't think so. Just a cough. But I'll watch him tomorrow. Thomas nods. This is what parents do in the darkness. Worry about their children. Share those worries with each other. Find comfort in not being alone with the fear. Your father snores, Beatrice observes. He always has, Thomas says. My mother used to complain about it. Said it was like sleeping next to a pig. Beatrice smiles slightly. It's not so bad. At least you know he's still breathing. This comment, casual, almost joking, carries weight. Old Thomas is old. Every night he survives is a small victory. The snoring is reassuring. It means life continues. They sit quietly, watching the small flames. This is intimacy, medieval style, not passionate or dramatic. Just being together in the darkness, sharing warmth, sharing silence, sharing the simple fact of existence. After a while, Beatrice speaks again. I was thinking about spring. That's months away, Thomas says. I know, but I was thinking we'll need to plant more beans this year. We ate through our stores faster than expected. Thomas considers this. We can do that. I'll talk to the bailiff about getting another strip in the field. They discuss planting for a few minutes. Practical matters, survival matters. What to grow, where to grow it, how much they'll need to feed the family through next winter. This is how medieval people used these wakeful hours. Planning. Talking about things that needed discussing, but got lost in the busyness of daylight. Eventually, the conversation fades. They've said what needed saying. Now they just sit, each lost in their own thoughts, comfortable in the silence. Behind them, on the sleeping platform, one of the children shifts and murmurs something unintelligible in sleep. Beatrice turns her head, listening, making sure no one is waking and needing attention. But the murmuring stops. Whoever it was has settled back into deep sleep. I should check the fire before we go back to bed, Thomas says. He adds a bit more ash to the embers. Not enough to smother them, just enough to slow their burning. The flames die down to a glow again. The room dims. Darkness reclaims most of the space, leaving just a faint orange light at the hearth. Ready? Thomas asks. Beatrice nods. Together they return to the sleeping platform, navigating by memory and the faint glow from the hearth. They climb back under the blankets, still warm from their body heat, from the children's heat, from the fading warmth of the stones. They arrange themselves back into sleeping positions, Thomas on his side. Beatrice pressed against his back, the familiar shape of marriage, of years together, of knowing exactly how to fit, and without discussion, without decision, sleep begins to creep back in. The second sleep, approaching like a gentle tide, eyelids growing heavy, thoughts slowing, breathing deepening. This is the pattern. First sleep, then waking, then second sleep. Natural, normal. The way humans slept for thousands of years before electric lights disrupted the rhythm. Within minutes, they're both asleep again. The watching hours are over. The second sleep begins. The second sleep is different from the first. It's lighter, more prone to brief wakings, more filled with dreams. Your body has already gotten its deepest rest during the first sleep. Now it's maintaining, sustaining, carrying you through until dawn. Thomas dreams, fragmented images, the mill wheel turning, water flowing, sacks of grain stacked high. His father, younger, showing him how to test flour quality by feel. None of it makes complete sense, but all of it feels important in that strange way dreams do. Beatrice also dreams, though hers are different. She's baking bread, but the dough won't rise. She keeps checking it, waiting, but it stays flat. Anxiety dreams, the kind that come from the constant worry of managing a household, of making sure there's enough food, enough warmth, enough of everything. The children sleep deeply, dreamlessly, their young bodies repairing themselves, growing imperceptibly through the dark hours. Old Thomas wakes again, one of his many small wakings, and lies there in the darkness, thinking about nothing and everything, about being young, about his own father, about the field he used to work before age made him too weak for heavy labor, about how strange it is to be old, to be dependent on your children after years of being the strong one. He doesn't mind exactly. It's the natural order, but it's strange nonetheless. He shifts position, trying to ease the constant ache in his hip. The movement causes a twinge that makes him wince, but then he finds a better angle, and the pain subsides to its usual dull throb. He closes his eyes again. Sleep returns, or something close to it. Outside, the night is at its deepest. The hours between midnight and dawn are the coldest, the darkest, the most still. If you were outside right now, which no sensible person would be, you'd feel the cold like a physical presence. Not just chilly, but bone-deep cold. The kind that makes you wonder if spring will ever really come. But inside the cottage, the cold is held at bay. Not defeated. The room is certainly cold by modern standards, probably in the 40s Fahrenheit, but bearable. The banked fire still radiates faint warmth. The mass of bodies under the blankets generates heat. The small enclosed space holds that heat better than you might expect. The night continues its slow progress toward dawn. 1 hour passes, then another. Time moves differently in sleep, simultaneously too fast and too slow. The sleeping mind doesn't track it properly. You close your eyes and open them, and have no idea if it's been minutes or hours. Thomas wakes again briefly, around 4 or 5 in the morning. He doesn't fully surface into consciousness, just becomes aware enough to notice he needs to urinate. He carefully extracts himself from the blankets, slides off the platform, locates the chamber pot in the corner by feel, relieves himself, and returns to bed. The whole process takes maybe 2 minutes. He's asleep again, almost before his head settles back onto the pillow. This is normal. Medieval people woke multiple times during the night for practical needs. There was no shame in it, no concern. You woke, you took care of whatever needed taking care of. You went back to sleep. Simple. Beatrice wakes around the same time, also for practical reasons. She checks on the children by feel, reaching out in the darkness to locate each one, to make sure blankets are still covering them, to verify they're still breathing steadily. All 3 are deeply asleep. She relaxes and settles back down. The second sleep continues. Dreams come and go. Small wakings come and go. The darkness holds steady, absolute, unrelenting. No dawn yet. Still night, still sleep. But gradually, imperceptibly at first, things begin to change. The quality of the darkness shifts. It's still dark, completely dark, but something is different. There's a sense of approaching dawn, even though the sun is still well below the horizon. Animals know it. The chickens in their coop attached to the cottage begin to stir slightly. The roosters aren't crowing yet, but they're waking. Inside, some internal clock in Thomas's body registers the approaching dawn. He doesn't wake fully, but his sleep lightens. He's closer to the surface now, more easily roused. And then, finally, after hours and hours of darkness, the first hint of dawn appears. It's not light yet, not even close. But the darkness outside is no longer absolute black. It's shifted to something slightly less dark. Deep, charcoal grey. If you were looking out the window, if there were a window to look out of, you might just barely be able to distinguish the shape of the nearest building against the sky. It's around 6:30 in the morning now. Still an hour or more until actual sunrise, but dawn is approaching. The world is slowly, gradually emerging from night. Inside the cottage, everyone is still asleep. But it won't be for much longer. The night is ending. The long darkness is coming to a close. The first to wake is Beatrice. She always wakes first, some internal sense telling her it's time to rise and begin the day's work. She opens her eyes to darkness. It's still too dark to see anything, but she knows from the quality of that darkness, from the subtle shift in air temperature, from the distant sound of a rooster finally crowing, that dawn is approaching. She lies still for a moment, gathering herself. The bed is warm. The idea of leaving it is deeply unappealing. But the day doesn't wait. Work doesn't wait. She needs to wake the fire, start breakfast, get the household moving. Carefully, slowly, she extracts herself from the blankets. The cold air hits her immediately. It's not freezing. The cottage has retained some warmth through the night, but it's cold enough to make her shiver. She wraps her cloak around her shoulders and slides off the sleeping platform. Her feet find the floor, cold, very cold, even through the rushes. She stands, lets her eyes adjust to the darkness, and begins navigating toward the hearth. Her movements are practiced, confident. She's done this thousands of times. She knows exactly where everything is, even in absolute darkness. She reaches the hearth and kneels. Her hands find the wooden ash shovel propped nearby. She begins the morning ritual of waking the fire. Carefully, she scrapes away the ash that was packed over the embers last night. Please let it have worked. Please let the fire still be alive. Banking doesn't always succeed. Sometimes the fire dies despite your best efforts, and then you face the tedious task of restarting it from scratch with flint and steel. But this morning, luck is with them. As the ash comes away, she reveals embers, still orange, still glowing, still alive. Relief washes through her. Good, the fire survived. The day can begin properly. She adds a small handful of dry kindling to the embers and blows gently on them. The kindling catches almost immediately, small flames springing up, growing, spreading. She adds slightly larger sticks, building the fire back up. More light fills the room. The darkness retreats slightly. By the time the fire is properly re-established, flames dancing, warmth beginning to radiate, the first genuine light of dawn is appearing. Not inside the cottage. There are no windows facing east, and the small window they do have is still shuttered. But outside, the world is transitioning from black to grey. The rooster crows again, louder this time. Other birds are beginning their morning songs. Dawn chorus, they call it. The world waking up. Thomas stirs. The sound of Beatrice moving around, the crackling of the newly built fire, the gradual lightening of darkness, all of it registers in his sleeping mind and begins to pull him toward wakefulness. His eyes open. He sees the fire burning, sees Beatrice moving around it, and knows it's morning. He sits up, rubbing his face, trying to shake off the last clinging fragments of sleep. He's rested. The night's sleep, both sleeps, with the wakeful period between, has done its job. His body feels renewed, ready for work. "Morning," he says, his voice rough. "Morning," Beatrice replies. She's already dressed now. She pulled on her gown and tied her apron while the fire was building. "Sleep well?" "Well enough," Thomas says. "You?" "The same." This brief exchange of morning greetings is their ritual, simple, familiar, comforting in its ordinariness. Thomas stands and stretches, his joints cracking. He's getting older. Not old like his father, but old enough that mornings take a bit longer to get moving. He pulls on his tunic, belts it, and joins Beatrice at the hearth. Behind them, the children are beginning to stir. Emma sits up first, blinking in the dim light. "Is it morning?" she asks, her voice still thick with sleep. "It's morning," Beatrice confirms. "Time to get up." Emma nods and nudges John, who's still sleeping. "Wake up! It's morning!" John grunts and rolls over, not quite ready to face consciousness. Emma pokes him again, harder. "Come on, Mother says it's time." John finally opens his eyes, scowls at his sister, a reflexive morning grumpiness, and sits up. Geoffrey is still asleep, curled up in a small ball. He'll need to be carried to the fire and gradually coaxed awake. 4-year-olds don't wake as easily as older children. Thomas goes to the door and lifts the bar that secures it at night. He pulls the door open. It's heavy, resisting slightly, and cold air rushes in, but also light, actual light, grey dawn light, not bright, but bright compared to the darkness that's dominated for 15 hours. Outside, the world is visible. The village is emerging from shadow. You can see the outlines of other cottages, the stone church, the bare trees beyond. Everything is grey and dim, but it's visible. Night is over. Day is beginning. Thomas stands in the doorway for a moment, looking out, breathing the cold morning air. Behind him, the household is coming to life. Beatrice is beginning to prepare breakfast, adding water to the pot over the fire, measuring out oats for porridge. Emma is helping Geoffrey wake up, talking to him softly, helping him climb down from the sleeping platform. John is pulling on his shoes, preparing for whatever morning chores await him. Old Thomas is the last to wake, as usual. He sits up slowly, groaning at the protest from his joints, and reaches for his cloak. "Morning," he says to no one in particular. "Morning, Father," Thomas replies. The household is awake. The long, dark night is over. The day, with its work, its routines, its familiar patterns, stretches ahead. This is the rhythm. Night comes, you sleep. Day comes, you wake. Simple, natural, aligned with the sun and the seasons, rather than fighting against them. Thomas closes the door. No sense letting all the warmth out, and returns to the fire. The family gathers around it, as they do every morning, drawn to the light and warmth. They'll eat breakfast soon. Then the children will do their chores. Thomas will go to the mill. Beatrice will begin her endless round of household tasks. Old Thomas will sit by the fire and rest, contributing what he can in his diminished state. And tonight, when darkness falls again, early, inevitable, they'll repeat the cycle. Supper, evening tasks, the first sleep, the watching hours, the second sleep, dawn. This is how medieval people survive the long, dark nights, not by fighting the darkness, but by accepting it, by sleeping with it, in rhythm with it, understanding that night was as much a part of life as day. That darkness served purposes: rest, restoration, privacy, intimacy, that daylight couldn't provide. They didn't fear the night. They lived with it, through it. And they woke each morning to the light with gratitude that darkness, however long, always ended. They understood something we've forgotten. Darkness is not the enemy. Night is not something to be conquered or eliminated. Sleep is not a single block of unconsciousness to be optimized and measured. Sleep is a rhythm, a dance between wakefulness and rest. A natural part of being human that doesn't need to be forced or controlled, just allowed. The watching hours, that period of gentle wakefulness between sleeps, might have been the most valuable part of the night. In our modern world, if we wake in the middle of the night, we panic. We check the clock. We worry about whether we'll be able to fall back asleep. We think of it as insomnia, as a problem to be solved. But medieval people expected it, even welcomed it. It was time to think, to pray, to talk with a spouse, to simply be present in the quiet darkness. And because they didn't fight it, didn't worry about it, sleep came back easily, naturally, when the body was ready. So here we are, at the end of our night with a medieval family. We've traveled through 15 hours of darkness with them. We've felt the weight of that darkness, the absoluteness of it. We've experienced the natural rhythm of segmented sleep. We've lived through the watching hours between sleeps, and we've emerged into the grey dawn light alongside them. What strikes me most about this experience is how different medieval sleep was from ours. We've lost something fundamental in our transition to consolidated sleep driven by artificial light and alarm clocks. We've lost the natural rhythm of first sleep and second sleep. We've lost those quiet watching hours in the middle of the night. Time for reflection, for intimacy, for prayer, for simply being awake in the darkness without guilt or anxiety. Medieval people would probably look at our sleep habits with confusion. 8 hours straight, never waking except to worry about insomnia. Lights blazing until we force ourselves to sleep. Alarm clocks jarring us awake before our bodies are ready. It would seem bizarre to them, unnatural. Right now, in your own bed, you're experiencing something both similar to and vastly different from their experience. Your room is probably warmer than theirs ever was. Your bed is certainly softer. You're not sharing it with your entire family for warmth, but the basic need is the same. The need for rest, for darkness, for letting go of the day and trusting that sleep will come and that morning will follow. So let it happen. Don't fight the darkness. Don't fight the waking if it comes in the night. Medieval people would tell you, if they could, that waking at 2 in the morning isn't insomnia. It's just the natural gap between first sleep and second sleep. It's the watching hours. It's time to lie quietly, to think peaceful thoughts or no thoughts at all, and to let sleep return when it's ready. Maybe there's wisdom in that approach. Maybe our anxiety about sleep is actually preventing good sleep. Maybe if we accepted waking in the night as natural rather than problematic, we'd sleep better overall. The family in that cottage didn't have comfortable beds by our standards. They didn't have central heating or electric lights or alarm clocks. They slept in a crowded pile, in a room that we'd consider cold, in darkness so complete you couldn't see your own hand. But they slept well. They slept naturally. They slept in rhythm with their bodies and the seasons and the sun. And they woke each morning, ready for the day, restored by the night, grateful for the return of light.